Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Red, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
Ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
downloaded to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
and I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Revolution Radio. listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome to Talk Now Radio, listener-supported radio, where no topic is taboo and your support helps keep it that way. Brought to you by Revolution Radio, listener-supported radio, where information never sleeps. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man, and joining me today is going to be Darren Storer, and we're going to talk about his book, The Key of the Storm. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody real quick, to make sure you don't forget to make a donation. It helps keep the servers online, and if y'all get a chance to run by my site, www.talknowradio.net, you could help support that show. It helps keep me going as well. I know that's two different shows, but we're getting through a bad economy like everybody else, and your support does help. So, at any rate, Darren, how are you doing today?
Good afternoon. I had a busy day. Mostly been writing, editing, and preparing for the interview. Well, listen, I was noticing that I couldn't find a web page on you. Are you just using your Facebook page mostly? No, I have a blogspot, keyofstorm.blogspot.com, and my publisher's White Tracks, which is WHYTE Tracks, also have a page for me on their own site. Oh, okay. You know what? I remember that now, but when you and me first scheduled this show, it was a few weeks back, and by the time I got around to posting it, I had forgotten about that other stuff you told me in Facebook, and I didn't scroll up and look at it. No problem. But at any rate, just wanted everybody to know how they can learn a little bit more about you. And also, if y'all want to get to know him on a more personal level, he does have a Facebook page as well. That's what, Facebook /Daniel Store? Daniel? Sorry, Darren. Yeah, what was your Facebook URL again? Do you know it? Have it handy? Yeah, it's just under Darren Storer. Okay, that's what I thought, just making sure. All righty. Well, listen, nobody's going to talk a lot about your book today, The Key of the Storm. But I think you also mentioned to me you got another book out as well. Is that correct? Yeah, I have two out now. Third one's due out late autumn, which is a sequel to the first book. And there should be another one following shortly thereafter, so my publishers tell me. Okay. I should have four out by really late spring next year. I'm working on the fifth now. All right. Well, real quick, why don't you tell everybody that's listening here exactly what got you interested in writing about the material you're writing about? Well, The Key of the Storm is a record of esoterical stroke psychic experiences from the 90s, detailing visions, dreams, experiments within a circle I was a member of for a while, and the results of those events. Some were good, some were bad. After I left that circle, I spent some years just making odd notes and writing experiences down, not quite in a diary form, but just very loose, more for a cathartic experience. It was never intended to be formed into a book. That all came about rather much by accident. A friend I hadn't spoken to for some years came across me on Facebook, recommended me to a publisher. I sent off a manuscript after contacting them, and much to my surprise, within a couple of weeks of them having it, I actually had a contract. So it's snowballed from there. It's all quite surreal at times. It just seems to have taken over. Okay. Now, you said a lot of this was about your astral projection trips. I take it you learned to astral project later on in life? Wasn't exactly something that was with you in childhood? It
all stems from childhood.
It does. Okay.
Although, as a child, I had no idea of what was occurring or why I was seeing or hearing or even feeling things. I had no one that I could actually ask for an explanation or any guidance. The upbringing I have, though not religious in any way, such things were generally shunned. It took until I was in my mid-30s, a chance meeting with a character that is referred to as a Celt in the books. From there, my education into these matters took off. Explanations were offered, guidance given, and I developed from there. My childhood and teenage years were spent very much like a rubber ball bouncing off of walls. I was going from one thing to another, trying to experiment with mirrors or opening up to things just to try to learn to control it or to understand what was happening. But as I say, it took until I was in my mid-30s before any real answers presented themselves.
Okay. Now, what I've actually read online and in other books as well is that there's a difference between astral projection and out-of-body experience, that with the astral projection, you're actually delving into different dimensions. There are different planes within your own mind, your own soul, versus out-of-body experiments or experiences, rather, where your mind and your soul is actually leaving your body to travel around the universe. Is that correct, or do you know?
I would tend to disagree with that.
Okay.
Leaving your body, once you've learnt to control it, an awful lot of people will do it without even realising, or with a lack of control over the actual events. But anything outside of your body,
Jack, or leave their body, no matter how hard they try, do you think?
it comes down to levels of acceptance. The media represents these things as lurid sensationalism. It's for entertainment. And people begin to see it as just special effects in a film. Those that can do it, or those that say they're psychic, tend to be ridiculed by society. It starts with, well, whenever it shows at school, by churches, any form of authority. These things are not accepted. They are the unorthodox. Even though I believe our ancestors used these things as natural, everyday tools to survive. The modern world exists for media-driven greed. And anything spiritual has to be shut down. Even churches, whichever religion people choose. Most of them deny or decry any form of psychic ability whatsoever, even though they're asking you to live on faith of a psychic event that they describe as the reason for their religion.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a lot of that there before. A lot of people, I've had people tell me, oh, I'm converted to Christianity. I'll never miss a day of church again in my life because I had this epiphany. The same people, a year or two later, you don't see them in church anymore. And you wonder what happened to their epiphany.
Well, I am quite strange with churches. I can be honest and say I can admire the architecture and I understand the reason why they're there. But I feel very uncomfortable and, if not very unwelcome, even setting foot into those places. The last time I was in one was Rochester Cathedral. And the moment we walked in there, I'd taken my wife there as a birthday trip to the town of Rochester, sightseeing. We walked in there. She wandered about taking pictures, as most of the tourists were. One of the priests there took offence that I was even in there. Very quickly after we came through the doors and followed us, myself, I should say, every step of the way. Even when we walked into their gardens, so my wife could take pictures of their rose bushes and so on, the man was standing there glaring directly at me, as if he felt I was committing some form of sacrilege, even by entering the building.
Okay. So, why don't you tell us a little something more in depth about what it was like for you when you first started getting this thing that you were leaving your body? I mean, I'm sure you ended up making some kind of having some kind of trouble with the people around you when they heard about it, for example. Is that correct?
Yes. How would I describe this? It's an event that, no matter how long it seems to take, is generally over in a matter of seconds. In our time, it is very short-lived. Where you're leaving this plane for another, it can feel like hours. But the actual time lapse for real is very, very short. Now, as a child, when these things were occurring, once I actually found a way to express what was happening, to vocalise any coherent form of description, I was immediately told, that didn't happen. That can't happen. You're dreaming, you're imagining it, you're making it up. And I think so many people get treated the same way. It became to a stage where people would treat you as if you was an idiot for even trying to talk about it, or as if you was insane. Almost a form of social leper, where because you try to ask or describe some event that you know is not the normal thing you've been taught, but really a huge spiritual event, people just shun these things. For the whole, if I was to walk down the road, say, as any of your listeners might, and stop someone and try to describe an event, even to someone we knew, let alone a stranger, we would receive very odd looks and be treated as if, have you been drinking, are you on drugs, or are you insane? And that's the general view that most people have of this sort of thing. It took years of being told that these things couldn't happen, and how I was a fool for even thinking they were, or perhaps I was insane. As I say again, it was only because of a chance meeting in my mid-30s, that I actually found someone who approached me and recognised what was going on around me and started to talk to me about it, that I actually realised I wasn't the only person going through it. And that was a major event in my life, a major relief to actually find someone who could sit and listen, understand, and explain why these things were happening.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things I hear is people don't understand why things happen, because, some people go through their entire life and never have an out-of-body experience, while other people, they just could be in the middle of their classroom or their job and just pop out, not even trying to do. So I guess it does kind of tend to make somebody wonder, why me?
Well, I think with the usual attitude of society through school, right the way through most people's lives, it's drummed into people that this doesn't exist. And then you begin to, for some people at least, or even the majority, that you begin to accept that it doesn't exist, and you close yourself off from it. And once you've closed yourself off from it, it's very, very hard to open back up to it. Again, levels of acceptance. If you can't accept it as an actual thing, and you reject it, eventually it will vanish from you. I think everybody can achieve these projections, but they have to accept it totally without any trace of doubt to begin with, that they are natural events.
So then the big question would be, how do you get rid of that little nagging doubt?
There you have to train yourself. Some people can't do it. it is a huge effort of willpower. Same as meditation. Meditation, I freely admit to, I meditate as much as possible in between writing every chance I get just to clear myself down. However, some people can't concentrate to actually meditate. It is down to self-training, self-discipline.
And I guess also part of through the art of meditation is the part that comes to where you're supposed to cut down on all the rubbish that's running through your mind, all the extra thoughts you don't need, and get down to as few as possible.
Yep. You really need to create a void within yourself where nothing exists. And when you reach that void, then you can meditate and concentrate what powers you have by distilling them, removing any extraneous thoughts until there is a single purpose. And in that void, you then find it's a dualistic experience where within a void you create a space. And from that space, you can take your steps into other places. But it does take a lot of self-training, self-discipline.
Yeah, and I guess when you're also about getting rid of all, creating this void, your doubt kind of drops off in that void somewhere, and that's when you're able to do what you need to do.
Yep, if you've achieved that place within yourself, if you've managed to create it or even find it, then nothing else exists. There are no disturbances. There are no distractions. There is only the desire of the will to exist within that space and find other places from there. Is, for instance, like sitting in the middle of a compass. From there, you can point to any direction you want. Just to use that as an analogy. But that's a good way I would liken it to. When you reach that spot at the centre of yourself, so to speak, from there, any direction is possible. But to get there first, you have to, again, I keep repeating it, become disciplined enough to reach it in the first place. It's not an easy place to find.
Right. Now, for the people that they've lost the ability, they can get the ability back, but they have to repeat this process, right?
I would think, yes. It is learning to accept what you know to be natural and rejecting what the world in general tells you is not.
So once a person does go ahead and accept this, and they say they have an out-of-body projection, is there any odds they can go back to doubting again and not be able to do it? Or was this one of those, once they mastered it, it's mastered forever?
It is something that again, there are different opinions and views on. Once achieved, it's easily re-achievable. But as with most things, it is a discipline. You have to work at it. It takes practice. It's not something that most people could just sit there and say, well, I'm going to do this now, a click of the fingers, and they're gone. Of course, it takes time and preparation even to reach that stage.
Of course, there's also the issue of people not having time to sit down and meditate in a busy world that we live in today.
There, again, it becomes discipline. Avoid certain things. Make space and time for yourself. Many people find their lives rotate around television. Television, I rarely even look at, let alone watch. It's not something that interests me. It's a distraction. And to be honest, for the majority of what they would put on television is just mindless dross anyway. There are far better ways to spend your time than watching television or I would prefer myself to walk out into a quiet spot, local countryside, local park, wherever. Sit somewhere quiet and let nature, sounds of nature, wash over me until I've slipped into that meditative state where I can move on to other places.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you on that. I'm not real fond of TV like I used to be. I mean, I still watch a little bit with my wife in the evening, but that's mainly just something me and her can do together. We don't require talking, because if we talked, we'd probably argue.
Well, it's the same with computers. I view computers as a necessary evil. I use mine, 1, to work, 2, for research if I can't find something in one of the books that I need to use as a referral for a quote or such like. I use Facebook because, to be honest, my children insisted that if I used it, I'd be able to basically contact old friends and so on. But from there, it became more a medium, not just, say, to advertise the books even, but to contact or be contacted by people undergoing these experiences. And it's become quite a little community, so to speak.
Yeah, I've noticed that when you post things to Facebook, it's on a wide variety of topics. I take it that you're not limiting yourself solely to astral projection, are you?
There are many subjects that interest me. So rather than have a page that is purely about myself, which will be basically just too self-effacing, even for my taste, I like to put up other subjects that may be related in one way or another, or even if they're not, that other people may like to read about. There's a huge community of people interested in Nephilim or ancient alien technology, or, say, for instance, UFOs or hauntings, the paranormal in general, even nature itself. If something catches my eye and I think others may enjoy it, I post it up for others to look at, or not, as the case may be. If someone wants to post something on one of my walls, I freely encourage them to do so. Other writers, poets, or people even just starting off writing or creating poetry or even paintings, the offer's always been there. Showcase your work. You may be surprised at the response you get. And from there, you can step into a wider world.
Well, Facebook was made to share medium like that, so, I don't really block my wall off. Other people post it all the time. I don't really, care, don't say nothing much about it. I mean, it doesn't really matter who posts what. It all ends up at the bottom before very much time goes by anyway.
It does. It's a shame that Facebook is becoming overrun with adverts that Facebook is placing on people's walls to, well, it's at the expense of the news feed. People are finding it harder and harder to see other people's news feeds. I hear this complaint all the time. It's getting to a stage where the only safe way to try and contact someone on Facebook is by messaging. Because to place something on someone else's wall, quite often it has a habit of disappearing.
That is true.
People all say the same thing to me. It is to make way for adverts. For instance, I'm fast approaching 1,000 likes on my author page. Yet, since they changed the news feed, my viewing figures, no matter how many people like my page and the figures rise every week, the actual viewing figures are actually slowly going down. The comments are there, the likes are there, yet people are finding, unless they come direct to my page, they're missing things because Facebook is blocking people's posts unless they pay for them.
Right.
Every time I post, I get asked, do I want to pay for people to see this? And the answer to that is no. If they've already liked the page, then why can't they see it for free?
Yeah, I know. I see it posted to the actual pages feed all the time that Facebook is doing that advert thing, and because they want you to pay to have your stuff showing on the front page. What they've done is they made some kind of deal rather than charging that your material can stay there. Every time somebody likes it, it gets bumped back up. If they quit liking it, it gets bumped down until it goes off the board altogether, unless, of course, it's paid for, at which time it's granted an exceptional amount of time.
Well, even saying that, I mean, Facebook contacts me quite often with offers of, if I pay so much per day, they will guarantee so many people will get to see my posts. Yeah, these are people who've actually liked and followed the page. So why are they being prevented from seeing it if I'm not paying for it? It's meant to be a free service. If someone wants to follow a page, why are they being actively blocked from seeing it? Unless the creator of that page pays.
Because Fred Zucker has gotten extremely, and I do mean extremely greedy. I mean, if you go into them games, they want you to buy gold at an exorbitant amount of money that nobody can keep up with, and as if they're not making enough money off of that, they're blocking all these news feeds for more money.
I quite agree. It's a continual complaint I hear from so many people. I get asked to repost things or post things direct to people's pages, but even then, quite often, it doesn't work. Even when people share things from my pages, quite often, again, that vanishes because it's not a paid-for post.
Well, I think a lot of their problem is they don't have a good enough competition. If they was really worried that everybody at Facebook would go off to another social network, they'd make changes for fear of losing their clientele.
I think when one shows up that's viable, that can work well enough, I think there will be a mass exodus and Facebook will go the way of MySpace and all the other sites like that. It will just be superseded. It will kill itself off purely because of the way it's treating its users.
Actually, that is exactly what happened to Facebook. They were, at one time, the Facebook of the Internet. I mean, everybody went there. Everybody had a Facebook page. Their forums were posted to. Their blogs were posted to. And I mean, they were just doing all kinds of good. And then somewhere down the line, they started doing these extra charges for extra things. And then Facebook comes up on the line, and MySpace had a mass exodus, and now Facebook's still there, but it's kind of like a ghost town.
It is getting harder and harder, and I've noticed more and more people leaving. What they're replacing it with, I don't know, but I've been quite fortunate in that those people who have followed me and then left Facebook, quite a few of them still contact me via Skype or via email. And there, it may take time to get round to everybody, but it's still a form of contact. Now, I recently went on holiday. I came back Saturday last week. Saturday afternoon, I got back. I had so many emails waiting for me that before I even got near Facebook, it took me through till Monday morning to clear them down, to reply to each one properly and take, the conversations that were going on those backwards and forwards. I managed to pop on to Facebook, I think, Saturday night for a short time. But even there were so many messages and notifications of people trying to speak to me or ask me something direct that it wasn't until really Tuesday even that I actually managed even to catch up with that. Now, I should have come back from holiday and carried on writing, but in actual truth, it would only be last night stroke this morning that I actually got back to writing even.
Wow. That gets really busy, doesn't it?
It does. I quite look forward to it, though. It's, how can I put it? I'm happy to speak to anybody over any subject they care to speak about. However, if it eats into my writing time, I just work through the night. The thing is, with people from different time zones, for instance, I'm 6 hours in front of you. other countries are completely different again. I've sat up till 3, 4 in the morning Skyping with people, or rattling emails backwards and forwards, or sitting on, I will say, Facebook, talking to them on chat while I'm working. And I'll have so many tabs open on the computer, one for Skype, one for Facebook, one for what I'm working on, and I just switch in between them as each notification comes up.
I think my chat room was just talking about you. Somebody said something about somebody in the studio having a good radio voice. I like the geezer, good voice for radio.
My voice?
Yeah, I guess if you're the geezer he's referring to.
I'm flattered. My accent runs somewhere loosely between Surrey and London, and occasionally lapses rather badly into a London accent. I have to say, I'm quite flattered, though. I've never ever thought of my voice as being good for anything, really. That is quite a surprise. So thank you to whoever that was.
Yeah, I put your name in there. They was asking who it was. Said something about very nasal, must be a backcountry get-in, or I think gent.
Nasal, mostly because I've had my nose broken 3 times. So it affects the way I speak somewhat, plus quite possibly the fact that I'm a very heavy smoker. That's one of the curses I suffer from through life and writing. I tend to sit and drink vast amounts of black coffee and smoke very heavily. But that may well be what affects the voice, I'm afraid, as well as the nose.
Oh, now somebody's saying that's me, they think. They can't make up their mind which one of us here. But if they hear me sounding nasal, it's probably because my lungs are pretty well shot. But back to the topic at hand, we get a little bit of drifting right there. We don't have a lot of time before the break time music comes on, but we got about 10 to 15 minutes. Real quick, what else is in the book, The Key of the Storm, that I haven't covered yet that you wanted to talk about before I forget to ask later?
Well, as I say, it's a description of events and the conversations that took place after them between myself and the character known as the Celts. He's actually a real person, alive, another author, and actually a playwright and actor. He lives in Clapham in London. His name is David Parry. It details how, during the course of these events, he explained, or we sat and spoke about them to come to a conclusion of why they was even occurring and what they meant. It's partially my education into these matters, partially the actual events and experiences, and partially what myself, being objective about them afterwards, made of them. It's written partly in prose, partly in verse. Some items I describe in poetry just to get the emotions across of what they meant, rather than just writing it down word after word. But it does detail, in quite some detail in some cases, what I did and why I did it. Some of it is hidden, and it's there for those, and I hate to use the phrase, in the know, to recognise.
Okay. Now, one of the things I was thinking about asking you a little bit earlier, I remember what it was. I've heard a lot of people that have had out-of-body experiences say that they had knowledge revealed to them during these out-of-body experiences, like Tommy Hawksblood says that he's had messages revealed to him about ancient astronauts and the church and religion and the spirit and, how God really works, what his will really is. And there's been other people as well. Do you know whether or not you've ever had any similar, forms of information come to you during these experiences?
Yes, again, it's a matter of perception and teaching you to accept what it is that you are. Each time I've experienced something, it has been part of a learning curve. That's the revelation that you are able to progress further. There is different levels and different forms of knowledge out there, which are going to be revealed to each individual in a way they can understand or accept best to their own psyche. Again, as I say, perception. No two people will agree on the same vision. What I say one thing means another person may take a slightly different view of. But yes, there are things being revealed to us through these visions, and mostly, for myself, it has been as to what the purpose of my doing any of this is at all, and to where I'm heading with it.
Okay, so part of your book is really getting at what the purpose of it is?
Yep, it's explaining who I am, why these things occur, and there is a question that everybody should ask. Do these events occur because of who we are, or do they occur to create who we are?
Kind of like back in the ancient days of the Israelites, only the prophets had visions. Could something similar be happening here, in other words? Or is it that not everybody does simply because not everybody has accessed the key to do it? Or, you know, you have to actually wonder.
I think they're within the strictures of any organised religion. If we use prophets or priests, monks, saints, whatever description you'd like to give them, it becomes a hierarchy in that only certain people seem to be allowed to experience these things. Anybody else is frowned upon. And it becomes a form of heresy. Heresy itself is to take not an opposing view, but an unorthodox view. And if, say, it's accepted by the society or culture of each time or each region that only certain people can see certain things, anybody who stands up and says, well, actually I can too, that's a threat to the order of that society, and it's stamped out. For instance, let's use Joan of Arc, created a saint many years after her execution. However, at the time, generally frowned upon, even by the church she was fighting to save against the English forces. Eventually it led to her being burnt at the stake, and her own church turned upon her. Because for a woman to have those visions outside of church control, it became a threat. And organised religion is all about keeping it organised. Any threat to the control of those in that hierarchy will be stamped out.
Well, I think anybody that had the vision, whether it be male or female, that was not part of the church hierarchy would have been considered a threat, because if the public could do it, then what would they need it for? And what would the public be finding out during these visions that the church wasn't telling them?
I quite agree. It's, how can I put this? A statement I made a while ago that has caused some controversy and led to some debate, in that I've stated publicly that I feel that all organised religion is merely beggars fighting over the scraps from a feast attended by others many thousands of years ago.
Wow.
The original messages of any religion are very quickly lost in the struggle for power, and the rituals themselves become more adhered to than the message. Messages are changed through politics and need. For instance, let's use the New Testament. That didn't exist until the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, hosted by Constantine and the Bishop Eusebius. The Gospels, none of which were written the 4 accepted Gospels, I should say, none of which were written anything between 30 to 60 years after the claimed crucifixion. Yet the Nag Hammadi scrolls, which at one point were trying to be suppressed, state quite clearly opposite views to those contained within the New Testament. How many Gospels were removed or deemed unfit for the public at that council meeting, which was designed to unify the Eastern Orthodox half of the Roman Empire, or the Holy Roman Empire at the time, with the Western half. Even then, the New Testament now, most of it is based on the King James Bible. However, when that was formed, that was copied from handwritten books, which have been collected over the centuries. And anybody who follows history can tell you that monks writing these books and the conditions they wrote in were exceedingly prone to mistranslations or putting their own perceived views overlaying what was there before. The message changes. The events change. What was once a historical event evolves over the centuries until it becomes something noted down, but it becomes irrelevant because it has very little to do with what actually occurred. The original message of any religion very soon evaporates. It's why, for instance, even some pagans think I'm heretical, because to myself, I will speak to whichever spirits, if you'll pardon the phrase, in any area that I happen to be in. I don't need a church of any form. I don't need a priest in any form. There are those who are drawn that way spiritually to some form of organisation. Myself, wherever I am, whoever's there, whichever, I hate to use the phrase God, but let's use whichever deity or nature spirit is there. If there's contact to be made, there's contact to be made. I don't pray in an orthodox manner. If I am somewhere, I will, I'll use this word pray again, to offer up an explanation for why I'm there, that I mean no harm, that I am respectful of the area and whoever resides there. And to use the phrase, I come in peace.
Okay. Joe Mata in the chat room was wanting you to repeat your website link again. Could you share that with them real quick? I shared your Facebook page, but I don't have a open window with your Blogspot page, or your other pages are open right in front of me. So could you share the Blogspot page with them, I guess?
The Blogspot is keyofstorm.blogspot.com. Primarily, that is just poetry videos that I've made, which there are not that many of, excerpts from books or snippets for other people that may be interesting. The actual Facebook page is easier to contact me through.
Folks, I'm afraid we're going to have him finish this when we come back. That music tells me we are being interrupted. So hold that thought, Darren. I'm sorry you got interrupted. We'll be right back after this break.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, I'm Benjamin.
And I'm Jasmine.
We are inner tour guides with black belts in the art of self-awareness and how to live a passionate life.
We love talking with you about what you have and what you want.
More importantly, we want to explore with you how to bridge the gap between that wanting and bring it right back to the having.
So what are your hopes, dreams, and desires?
Is it money, love, success, health, wealth, or something even more specific?
Let us guide you through the exciting adventure of turning what you want into what you have.
Come join in the conversation on our show, The Inner Revolution.
We look forward to exploring with you.
Hey, Truther Junkies, it's me, Angela Black, and I'm back. Join me every weekday except for Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern, Studio B on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com for my news show, At This Moment 2014. See you there.
The finder of lost children and missing persons. Monique Lassan. Surveillance civil and criminal investigations. I investigate.
No, I am the chosen one.
Do not underestimate the power of good, and do not dismiss the strength of the child.
Yes, every Wednesday evening on Revolution Radio, come join our very own Eye Investigatrix, Monique Lassan, with her private Eye X-Files.
So you're the finder of lost children?
Private Eye X-Files, every Wednesday from 10 to midnight Eastern, Studio B on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
I realize it's very hard for you to take in. But is your destiny to find the golden child?
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey folks, Captain Nighthawk here. Do you have a favorite host? Well, imagine if you will having all the broadcast shows from 2013 to listen to anytime you want. Awesome deal, huh? Anyway, so stop by freedomslips.com and order the entire 2013 library of your favorite host for just $30. Not only do you help with the station funding to keep us on the air, you also help the host because they get half of the net on every order. Also, we have Revolution Radio's all-time favorite shows all on one disc. The details are really broad, so you'll have to visit the website and go look at the details yourself. It's, again, www.freedomslips.com/season2013.htm. And get your favorites. First come, first serve, 7 to 21 days for delivery. Thank you. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps, including me. Later.
We've got to stop them! They're going to kill us all!
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
He wants a challenge. Let's give him one.
The voice that whispers in your ears are the screams that you fear. The mind you cannot defy is the heart that rules mankind. The people who made you are the gods that will save you. I am Steve Travesty. I am the voice. The ghost in the machine. Ghost in the Machine. Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Studio A.
Right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Okay, everybody, during the break time, I put the kiastorms.blogspot.com into the chat room. All you got to do is click on it and go right to his site. And he forwarded me the other information on Skype while we were in there, and I didn't get an exact link, but I can tell you the name of the place is Wife Tracks, WHYTE Tracks, TRACKS. You could just Google that, and it'd take you right to it. And I could probably get links, but it'd take me a little bit of time. I know they got some over in Facebook, but I'd have to, go over there, and I wouldn't be seeing what's going on here in the chat room while I'm over there. So, coming back to the subject at hand, you said you got one other book that's either already out or coming out. Is that correct?
Well, I have two out at the moment. The Key of the Storm and Poems Without a Home. Poems Without a Home is a mixture of philosophy, poetry, and esoteric observations. The next book coming out is a sequel to The Key of the Storm. That's called The Recusants Who Never Recanted. That's due out roughly October, November, I'm guessing from what I've been told. If by then all the books should also be available as e-readers or Kindles, whatever these devices are called nowadays as well. There is a fourth one due out after that, which again is a poetry book, which is called The Child Who Died from Other Tales, which again, much like Poems Without a Home, is philosophy, esoteric observations, mostly expressed in verse.
Okay. So you mentioned philosophy quite a bit here. Does this deal with the Hermetic tradition by any chance?
It tends more towards Crowleyanism, to be quite honest, or there is also dualism and Stoicism. By nature, I am Stoic of that school of philosophy. So, which that takes me, if I may, during the break, one of the adverts, asking people, I hope this won't cause any problems, but asking people to contact somebody so they can get what they want. And I hate to say this is a prime example of what's wrong with the world. It shouldn't be what you want. Concentrate on what you need. Anything you have now, have you at one point in the past not had it? Could you survive without it? If there's something now that you want that you don't have, are you surviving without it? If you are, then it's unnecessary. What you have is only now. The past is irrelevant. The future is only going to be now. What you do now extends, but it is always now. You need to make the best of now and worry less about if and buts. Too often you hear these phrases, if only I had this, but if I could do that. They're irrelevances, distractions, driven by consumerism and the media. They will take you away from any spiritual advancement that you have. It's only a question of, this is now, I will do this now. That's all there is to it. And I find it quite sad that people are driven to be told and come to believe that they have to have certain things. There's not one possession I have that I can't live without. They are there because they're there. The computer, I could work without it quite easily. I could just use a word processor. It wouldn't, it would cut down on contact with people. But that is a bonus thing, so to speak. With the book collection I've got, I can do without them. There are such things as libraries. I could always borrow a book rather than actually owning it. Also, I've got quite a good library of books that I own, I should say. But if I had to live without them, it wouldn't stop me being who I was or what I was doing. People find the material possessions possess them rather than the other way around. And that stops you. That's one of the things you're taught to accept at the expense of what you should accept, which is what is natural. And everybody, to some degree, has some natural psychic capability in one form or another. You know, at the risk of using labels, there are psychic mediums, there are channelers, there are people who can scry using mirrors, there are people who can remote view, there are people who do automatic writing. There are so many different types and levels of this stuff without even going into the magical practices.
Well, you know,
anything else is a distraction.
That is true. I remember when I was a kid in school, I used to hear teachers telling other students all the time, no, that is not a need, that is a want. Tells me even from early times on, your early childhood, you have a tendency to confuse need with want, and it goes into adult years. And it really, in a world full of distraction where you got TV, you got video games, you got video theaters, you got music, I mean, you name it, there's a distraction. Who could ever find room to work on their spirit or their relationship with God or a deity with all the distraction going on without sacrificing some of these distractions that so many people think they need so much that they don't really need in the first place?
This is a sad truth. I actually wrote a poem specifically on this, if I may. It's from Poems Without a Home. Towards the end of it, Truth lay down his head on a bed of lies, as the god of hallucinations beat away the flies, sat on a couch of falsehoods with disbelieving eyes. It's all just pure driven distractions, as if there is, I'm not going to use this phrase conspiracy, but for those who are in control of whichever level or form they take, it's as if they want you to be taken away from being even aware of yourself. And self-awareness is the first step to understanding.
Oh, is that from one of your books?
Yep, that's from Poems Without a Home.
Okay. Sounds like you got a lot of interesting points in that book.
Hopefully. I've been lucky with the reviews so far. I will say that. People seem to like it.
Is that a very big book, or is it kind of a little short little handbook?
It's got, I'm just looking through the pages now, about 120 pages in it. There's somewhere around probably 120 poems in it. My editor, who is actually the owner of the publishers I work with, picked those poems out from a set of around 300, put them in an order, so they progressed from one subject to another. The subjects covered range, I wouldn't say too extensively, but it goes through the four elements: depressions, melancholy, hypophenia, scrying, opinions on the church, opinions on Crowley, opinions on paganism, and the experiences I've had with them. It is all observational, and my own objectivity on these subjects. Hopefully, when people read them, they'll recognise some of the experiences in themselves, and it might encourage them to go further. There is a message in all the books, which bit by bit, as people are reading them, they're coming to see.
So this book kind of has a little bit of what you see right with life and a little bit of what you see wrong with life, both mixed up into one.
Yep. mixed in with the experiences I've had as I've walked along this path.
Yeah, wouldn't it be kind of interesting, though, to get your book and find somebody else who had wrote a book, similar material, only based on their personal experiences, and compare your two and see where y'all agree and where you disagree?
That would be a wonderful thing. Even when I get invited up to London to recite poetry or read from the books, it's always been a thing I've wanted for other people to read and put their own perspective on it, whether they've written books themselves or not. Quite a few of my friends are authors. Sometimes their take on what I've written is completely different to what I've intended. And there are lengthy conversations that occur because of that, which are very much fun. But
I would imagine
some form of synthesis because of it.
I would imagine that you could probably take that book into for example, an AA meeting or a depression group meeting or any kind of group meeting, and read a poem or two out of it, or read a poem at a time, and get feedback. And I'll bet you it'd be just like those 10 people saw that one car crash. You'd get 10 different stories from each member of that group, and it would lead into a big conversation that people might actually learn something from.
Well, that would be the hope.
I mean, you see this kind of stuff all the time. In a book like that, that'd be handy if you were attending some of those meetings to put out there and share a little bit at a time. It would really keep a group going when a group gets dead. You know what I mean?
Well, if anybody listening, and it's within reach for me, or if I could even do it over Skype, I'd happily take part. That would not be a problem for me.
Well, listeners, y'all heard that. And also, when we're talking to the listeners more directly, some of you listeners out there are radio hosts. I've said this before, but let me throw it out there again. I have no problem with sharing the information to my host as long as my guests, as long as they're agreeable. So if you guys are looking for guests and y'all like some of the guests I'm interviewing, feel free to contact me. If I don't know what my guests tell me, I'll be more than happy to contact them and ask them if they're interested and pass the information along if they are. Because these people, they're looking to get on shows and let people know about their books and what they're doing and events they have coming up. And some of them, they just like to talk. Aren't you kind of like that? You just kind of like to talk a little bit?
I like to talk. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Well, I know I do. I do it all the time. Well, I do. I'm a radio host. So I couldn't get out of it if I wanted to. So now those are the two you got on the market right now. And the other two you said are coming out later on in the year. And do you have any kind of groups or forums or anything that where people can meet you? They can post information they have, share other than Facebook. Like a storage database of some kind.
Not really. I'm not what you would call computer literate. The blogspot was set up with the help of one of my children. I should say that she's actually 20, so hello Samantha if you're out there listening. But without her, all this computer wizardry, all of it would be far beyond me, even using a printer. She had to set that up for me. I'm not known for getting on with machines of any kind. But for people to contact me, again, Skype or through Facebook, I will stop what I'm doing and talk to anybody as they show up. I'm quite happy to. And if anybody wants to post up on my author page or indeed even on my Facebook page, I'm more than happy, especially if it is on these subjects that I know other people on my pages like, then I'm more than happy for it to be there. If someone's, say, a poet, whether they're published or not, or they're writing, or they're an artist, a musician, or if they just have information they think others might be interested in on a given subject, post away. The more the merrier. It would make me very, very happy to see more people participate.
Okay, I remember that when I go around posting. I got a tendency to find things from time to time that, well, they're interesting to me. I don't know who else they'd be interesting to. I mean, like there's two groups I'm a member of over on Facebook that, because I've met the owners and I've seen the posts in them, I know it's the kind of material that they are interested in, so I know exactly what to post in those places.
Facebook is a strange place. I admin a pagan poetry group, which the poems people put up aren't always pagan, but it is a place for poets. My wife, Sarah, who does all the illustrations, she's an illustrator and a painter. She does all the illustrations for my books, creates paintings based on those that are one-off things. She has a group called Behind the Mirror on Facebook, which originally was meant to be pagan, paranormal items, but the membership grew and grew, and it became a place for people to post not only on those subjects, but just to turn up and have a chat and have a laugh, share problems, whatever. I don't get that much chance to go on there on that particular group as such. I tend to be pulled between the pagan poetry group and my author page. There's also the occult theatre page, which is hosted by David Parry, the Celts in the books. As I say, he's involved with theatre and puts on shows and so on as a theatre director. He's also an author actor. And his THA podcast, in which he interviews people, sometimes films them, to do with these esoteric or religious matters, or even UFO, ancient aliens, and all that.
Now, those are all
subjects
that I'm into: UFOs, ancient aliens, and religion.
Yeah. Well, I was asked by him to attend a meeting, a conference in February of this year, which unfortunately for various reasons didn't take place, to actually speak about Nephilim and so on, and fallen angels. It was based around the crystal skulls and the theories about them. It's a very sad thing that it just didn't take place for those reasons.
Yeah, I've read that some believe that, for example, the Nephilim were the children of the Anunnaki, and that this knowledge for the crystal skulls actually came from either the Anunnaki or the Nephilim, where they were passed down from the Anunnaki to the Nephilim to mankind, and that they're a record of everything that's transpired from the beginning of time.
It's quite possible. There are so many different opinions on these things. Some are rooted in the Judeo-Christian mythos. The Book of Enoch, one of the Apocrypha that was rejected for the New Testament, for instance, and so on. That goes in great length about the war in heaven, the angels that fell, and so on and so on. But then these references to these beings are pre-Babylonian. They are far, far older. So, to begin with, people need to understand where the roots of the legends or the information comes from. You know, each religion has its own take on these events, but they do agree on certain points, which is quite a curious thing. Nephilim, according to one view, are the offspring of the Watchers, angels that were set to watch humanity, mated with them, and created a race of giants, gave them technology, and then there was wars on Earth in which to eradicate the Nephilim. Some say that the Nephilim are the offspring of an alien race that genetically manipulated humanity, which would explain the missing link. There are so many different versions out there. You know, even say going back to the 70s, Erich von Däniken, Chariots of the Gods, and so on. Those are amazing things to read, But to cover the subject, you have to read so many different books and theories to gain any understanding. The THA podcast, I can't remember which episode it was, actually was interviewing someone who had written several books on the subject. That was a very, very good show, and it opened my eyes up to one or two new theories that I hadn't even heard of. But it's a subject, again, that is very, very hard to delve into unless you've got a huge selection to work from and find parallels between them.
Yeah, that is true, and it seems like the more sources you had to work from, the more differences you have, and it really makes it hard to derive one accurate story, in other words.
The trick is to find what common ground there is between each view. Somewhere, when you remove all the opposing views, there has to be one that agrees. And there, I suspect, lies the truth.
Yeah, they say the truth is usually somewhere in the middle.
Quite possibly.
But then you still come up with something that's kind of incomplete. And a lot of people, they like to fill in with theory, and then by the time it hits the website of the book, it's not really clear to find how much is theory and how much is fact.
That is one of the problems. Even with the books that are available on the occult, so much of it is theory, or based on hearsay, or a reference to another book, or another book, or another book. But really, the best books, say, on occult matters, are those written by those actively involved within it, rather than just researching it. It may become a very personal view of that said subject, but you're getting first-hand information. Second-hand information takes on another dimension. And then when someone else is researching for another book, and they use parts of that, they put their own spin on it again. And then the message, or whatever truth there was in a subject, becomes diluted.
Well, and this is part of the problem you have with some of the ancient texts as well, though, is so much of it was oral tradition for centuries before it ever made it to written on clay tablets or stone, much less on papyrus or any other form of writing, that you can't really get back to the original to find out what was really said to begin with. And, even the ancients did the same thing that we do today by putting their perception and their understanding into the retelling, and over time it becomes something totally different than what it was to begin with.
Well, I quite agree, even with the Nag Hammadi scrolls, or the Dead Sea Scrolls. The original translations from when they was discovered, now there are so many books on the subject. Again, each one an individual translation. The meaning becomes altered. I've got a couple of books on the subject. I haven't gone that much further into it. It's a series of scrolls by Gnostic Judaic sects, Greek tradition of Gnosticism. But to delve further into that particular subject, I'll have to abandon other subjects that I'm working on. So for me, it's a matter of time. But if someone, say, wanted to study one particular subject and they have the time to do so, I'm not going to ever say that would become an easy task. I suspect it would actually be very much the opposite. But there is so much out there on any given subject, it's down to the individual to work through piece by piece until they can make a map, so to speak, of all points leading to one thing. Somewhere amongst all that, as you say, hidden away, is something that's nearer, at least, to the original truth of what that subject is.
And then there's also the fact that some of it has not even been unburied yet. And we really have no idea how much is really still buried undergrounds in caves and who knows where else that we haven't found yet that would shed so much more light on this. We do know that
during the Dark Ages, books were burnt. People were hiding books in caves, burying them in the sand, and everything else to try to save at least one copy of a library that was being destroyed. But we don't know to the extent. So, just if you can't find something now, doesn't mean it won't be found a few years from now, in other words.
Hopefully. That is very much a hopeful thing. It's a curious subject to look at any form of knowledge, in that the original ideas behind it, again, where each time, as you say, oral tradition, it changes it. Even, say, let's use Celtic traditions, the Mabinogion, there are so many different versions of that. With the Hamadale, there are so many different versions of that. With the Nordic traditions, even basic history, World War II, for instance, history is defined by the politics at the time, by the victors, and it's coloured to a degree to represent people in the best possible light. Now, even if you use the Bible with Pontius Pilate washing his hands of blood, blah, 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 he was eventually forced to commit suicide for corruption. Now, the man was no
saint.
To use the phrase saint, yeah. It's quite possible that Christ himself was never actually crucified. Many, many theories say that he wasn't. Even to be the event of standing there with Barabbas.
I'll go you one step further. There are actual
Oh.
groups out there today, Darren, that would say that the whole entire New Testament was written up and dreamed up by a man named Arius Piso and his family, and they were the same ones that founded Christianity. That goes a long far and cry from what you're talking about. But the thing is, the people that are saying this, we don't have any way of knowing that they're right or wrong in their assumption, though. But you know what? It wouldn't be impossible.
That's the thing. There is no impossibilities, or there are no impossibilities until proven otherwise. Any theory is as valid as the next until disproven. And therein lies the rub of it all, in that no matter how much you learn, you cannot take a set view on anything. You have to be prepared to adapt your own view when better information or a better argument is presented. It's, say, with the arguments over religion, I have had people from all religions talk to me at one time or another on Facebook. Some are curious about what I'm writing, some disagree with it violently, some are enjoying it. But I end every statement I put up in a book or with a major post with the same phrase: may your gods, whoever they may be, walk beside you always. Because it's not for me to say to people, I am the only way to follow. It's not for me to judge someone on how they pray to whoever or whatever their belief or faith is. That's their path. But every individual's path has to be their path. It's an individual thing.
Right or wrong, it has to be their own decision.
Yep.
And they are, likewise, they're out of line if they try to tell you what the right path is.
Yes, I have had quite a few people trying to convert me in one way or another. I don't mind them doing it. I don't get offended. At the risk of sounding self-effacing, I actually quite enjoy it. Because then I get to argue points of theology with them. And quite often I find these people who want to convert me actually know very little about their own religion.
That is true. But, you kind of remind me of an Irishman that would love to go into a fight, didn't care whether he won or lost, because it was the actual fight that he was interested in the first place.
Yeah. To me, it's Possibly a good analogy. I have a reputation in some cases of acting as a devil's advocate, even, in that I will take a contrary view just to force people to express their views more directly, just to stimulate the conversation or the debate as it goes along. I actually think sometimes I've been invited to these things purely for that reason.
That's a very good possibility. It depends on who's inviting you and what they hope to gain by doing it.
Well, for the most part, it's always been David Parry, so while he's out there wherever, I shall say hello to him, and Paul, who also works closely with him. They are planning a couple of events, which I'm waiting for details on, in which I will probably end up acting in that role again.
So if you're invited, you plan to attend.
Oh yeah, whenever I can. Travelling isn't the easiest thing for me, living where I am and being disabled. But when it comes to getting into London, which isn't that far away from me, I'm only about 30 miles or so away, by train at least, the actual journey physically exhausts me. It actually causes me a lot of pain. But on those days when I'm able to do so, and there is an event, I love getting to them. You know, it is not quite like the old symposiums, not anymore at least, anyway. They used to be. But you can have some very, very powerful conversations. And again, with the opposing views, a form of synthesis occurs where everybody goes away feeling as if they've discovered or learnt something. Their own views may have altered in the tiniest of amounts, but it's still a change for the better.
Well, that's the important thing, is if people are changing for the better, because God knows they've been changing for the worse long enough.
Can't deny that.
I mean, I'm all for live and let live, don't get me wrong. But when your living is not letting other people live and it's harming others, then I'm not so generous anymore.
I quite agree with that as well.
But, pretty much I say my philosophy in life is live and let live. You're not God. God didn't assign you to the jury. He didn't assign you as a judge. He did not assign you on police patrol. If other people are sinning, leave it between them and God. It's not your business.
Whichever form of God they believe in, or whichever day it is.
Well, if they want to believe in a God that is not exactly really God, or they're in a religion that's ascribing things to God that ain't true, well, live and let live. That is their business, as long as they keep it to themselves and don't, cause all the bigotry in the world, all the racism in the world, and everything else that's being caused. In other words, they're not hurting anybody. Why not let them go with what they want to do? In other words,
exactly. What people do is what people do. It's down to them.
But it's when they start harming others. That's when when it should be stopped. You got to stop and say, "Wait a minute. The world would never be a better place if you just roll over and play dead."
Exactly. There are times that you will have to step in to stop something. Regrettable as it is, sometimes it is the only answer.
Yeah, that is true. But it's usually, like I say, brought on from other people that don't follow the live and let philosophy. They think they're God's policeman of the world, in other words.
I'm happy to say I've never felt that way. I had spent so long in my life having people in the past telling me that I couldn't be who I was, or what I was doing was just some form of mental aberration. It's a stage where, after a while, I swore to myself I would never form any form of judgment on someone because of what they believed in. That's not for me.
I do apologize for that.
That's not a problem.
Somebody outside just ran by with a loud motor and made a lot of noise, and it set off the dog.
I'm quite lucky in that my wife has 3 cats and they are locked out of the room I'm in. Otherwise, this conversation may have been cut short several times where they like to sit on the keyboard.
I swear I wish we had fish.
But
we don't. We live with what we got.
Yep.
Now, Darren, I don't want to let you escape without making sure that you've had a chance to talk about everything you wanted to talk about. So while we still got a little bit of time left, hopefully without you getting cut short, was there anything you'd like to get out there that I haven't thought to cover?
No, although I will say that one of the things that occurs a lot when people contact me is that I get asked, is it easy to get published? And is it easy to write? Or how long does it take to write a book? Now, these are questions that I can't particularly give an answer to because it's not easy to write anything. It's becoming harder to get published. Most of the big companies won't deal with anybody unless they have an agent. And agents are becoming very hard to find because they are concentrating on the more well-known authors. And as for even how long it takes to write a book, that's going to vary depending on what you're writing about, I would guess. It's a subject that comes up a lot. And it's more, although this may seem odd to say, it's just to let people know out there, if you're going to write a book, expect to rewrite it several times until you stopped writing for yourself. And you're writing it so that someone who's never seen it before can pick it up and be held by it. Because if you send a book off to a publisher, they are going to look at the first page, and if it doesn't grab them then, it's going to go straight in the bin. If they get held by your first page or first 2 pages, it goes into another pile. Then they come back to it at some time and flick through it at random. If at any stage they lose interest, it's not going to happen. So you've got to make sure that whatever subject you're writing about, you're passionate enough about to suffer all the way through it. Because you will suffer writing. And even if you get to the stage of being published, until we get those reviews in, you're going to sit there and suffer again. It is a terrible, terrible way to make a living. It breeds all sorts of nightmares and paranoia, and the sense of loss, or at least for myself, when a book's finished, before I move on to the next, is quite a strong emotion. It's like letting go of a child that's grown up, and you feel you may have done your best, but now it's up to that to go out into the world and do what it can. And once you get your reviews in, hopefully it will take off, and whether it's a work of fiction or a work of fact, whichever subject you're covering, if it can get people and they can at least enjoy it and get something out of it, that's the best you can hope for. But it is, for anybody who wants to write, who isn't already doing it, I warn you now, it is all-consuming and will take over your life. And for those people who contact me or try to help, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, leads the person to ask the question, what would offer such strong motivation to make all that worth it?
Now, this is where it becomes back into the realms of, you could say, the paranormal or esoterica, in that I started in early 2010 to have a series of visions that kept repeating themselves. They are partially covered in the books, but it became clear that what I was writing for myself had to evolve into something else other than just notes. This is how the book started off. I actually do believe I was told, write this book. The visions evolved and changed while I was doing it to reinforce messages over certain points even. Some of the things I've written, I will be honest with you now, and I actually state this in the books. I sit down to write one thing and find I've written something completely different. It's almost a blackout. I've no idea where some of the, say, poetry even comes from. Or some of the statements I've made just appear on screen or on paper in my handwriting or in the way I actually write on computer. But where they come from, I can't say. It's some form of channeling, yes, but why are these views being put forward? Is there some other message there that needs to be got out? And it's a driven motive. If, for instance, while I was on holiday in the middle of May, not writing, and I should have been there to unwind and relax and enjoy myself, I'll be honest, it was driving me mad at one point. I actually had a notebook, and even just to make a few notes as I went along, especially about one particular event that happened there, quite by surprise. It was as if, the message keeps coming through. You have to get this down. You have to write this. This has to be sent out. Other people have to see it. I'm never going to become a millionaire through writing. That's not the aim. If it happens, very nice, thank you very much. But it's not about money. It never has been. I'm with a small publisher, so I'm never going to become rich as it is. But the more people who see these books and read them and understand them, the more that message gets out of what's contained within there. And if it can help change people's lives, even from the basics, so they know they're not alone in experiencing these things, or they learn to accept and progress further along their path, I think that's it. I think at some time in the future, people within this, how can I put it, realm, the psychics, whatever, there's going to be some huge leaps in their capabilities, and answers will start to come forward. I think that's the next thing that's going to occur. I'm not talking about evolution for mankind in a X-Men sort of way. I don't mean that sort of thing, but I think you will find that spiritual-wise and with the capability of their psychic powers, people are going to return to the levels of our ancestors and be able to understand the world itself more because of it, and hopefully make a difference to other people, spreading out like the roots of a tree or the branches of a tree, so to speak. I think there's a few people out there writing at least for the same reason as I am, in that to get this across.
Slowly but surely over time.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Well, it's a hope that I'd say probably has worked down for many a century now, because there's a lot of books that was written that wasn't popular in their day that researchers today are going back and looking over, like, what was it, Two Babylons by Alexander Hislop is get a lot more attention than what it got at first when it first came out, and who knows which other ones, but basically it seems like they never get really popular until the author passes on.
Yeah, it's a sad thing there. Most authors or artists of any sort, I think, would prefer to at least have some level of recognition while it counts, because once they've moved on to whatever comes next, it's a bit late for them to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, we all like being recognised.
Of course, there's only a handful of Dan Browns and Stephen Kings and that to get to have that luxury.
That's the thing. I mean, I wouldn't want to, how can I put it, have these books turn into these Hollywood films or miniseries, whatever. I think that would destroy what's in them. I really do. I would prefer them to stay as books, where people can see the thought on paper, or as it turns out, eventually as an e-reader, and without all these special effects or flashy tricks to take your eye away from what's actually meant, to actually see what is there. It's a form of communication, a direct form, so to speak, where what I've put down into these books, people can pick the book up and there's a part of me in it, and we make contact that way. Hopefully it will then, in some cases, lead them to make direct contact with me, and the world there becomes a much wider place again, and the ideas can evolve and the theories can evolve, and we can all learn more. That's the hope. I've learnt as much from people speaking to me of their own experiences as I hope people have learnt from the books.
Okay. Now, we got roughly, well, this says 10 to 3, but since they usually go to break about 5 till, I'd say we have roughly about 5 minutes remaining in the show. Might be a good time to ask if you got any last-minute thoughts you'd like to share.
Apart from telling people, please buy the book. If you're ever in my area or you're in London and I can meet you, feel free to contact me and I'll happily come along, share a coffee or a pint and have a chat. Always open to that.
Always looking to meet new people and make new friends?
Yep.
Well, you sound like a very friendly character. I thought that was down-home country folks that were that friendly.
I've no idea. It's just who I am. You know, I'll admit I don't like crowds. I don't like noise. They get to me far too much. I prefer open spaces, out in the country, trees, rivers, lakes, especially the sea. But I'm happy to meet people somewhere that's easily reachable for both of us, or any of us, somewhere not too loud, where the conversation can be heard without having to raise your voices over blaring music or other people, and take it along from there.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you.
To meet people.
I don't like what I call a bunch of commotion. I mean, you know, the sound of people talking to people, if there's not too many in there at one time talking all at once. But you get me inside of like a lunchroom cafeteria. Oh, if I don't manage to drown it out, it just drives me bug-eared.
Well, that is a problem for me. I'm actually virtually completely deaf in my left ear. So, too many voices at once, or too much noise, I tend to miss what's being said. So, too large a group, I tend to avoid. I like small groups where people can sit, talk, and understand and hear what's being said. That, for me, is my idea of heaven, so to speak, where people can sit. If you move from one group to another to continue a vein of thought, fair enough. But the idea of sitting in a place where the noise is overpowering and you can't hear what's being said, that is a hellish place to be.
Yeah, that is true. Now, real quick, like before I cut you loose, or before they interrupt us, rather, should I say, I'd like to remind everybody that you could go to his page, keyofthestorm.blogspot.com, and he's also got his Facebook page under Doug Storer, and I don't have the links in front of me for the other one. Can you tell me the name of that other page again? It's kind of a unusual spelling to it.
Well, White's Tracks is the publisher's page.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's WHYTE Tracks, TRACKS. On Facebook, it's just Darren, DARREN Storer, STORER, or Darren Storer Author. The blogspot, keyofstorm.blogspot.com, is basically a showcase more for showing people's work or my own work that's not involved in the books as such. But say through Facebook is the best way to contact me, and from there it can end up on Skype or other means.
Alrighty then.
I'm happy to Skype with people as it comes along.
I'd like to also remind everybody, please come by my site, www.talknowradio.net, this Saturday at 1 p.m. Central, which is the same time this show starts here. And I'll be interviewing Daniela Norris on her book on dragonfly wings. And I believe this has to do with similar material to what we discussed today. It was either about reincarnation or about near-death experience. I'm trying to remember which, because I haven't read the description in a couple of days, but it promises to be interesting. And, you know, here lately, I'll be honest with you, because I get so few a live listener over at Talk Now and so many over here, I've been thinking about discontinuing live shows over there and using that mostly for a archive and for shows that where they just can't be available on Thursdays, and focusing most of my shows over here where we got a bigger live crowd. So if y'all want to see Talk Now stay up more often, more frequent, help me get some listeners over there. So I have a reason to adjust my, concentration that way. And in the meantime, folks, y'all have a great week otherwise, and we'll talk to you later. I just heard the noise that tells me we are fixing to get interrupted, so me and Darren's going to check out of here and say goodbye.
Oh, we're gone.
Listening to Revolution Radio.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio.